And we are live. Good evening, stream, and welcome to tonight's broadcast. As you can see, we are going to be putting together a model helicopter this evening. And before I do anything else,
and we are live. Good evening, stream.
I need to remember to mute that particular feedback. Otherwise, it's going to get very interesting really quickly. I also have my new microphone tonight, so I'm hoping that sounds okay. Maybe a little bit loud, but let me know how it sounds. I have a cup of tea, I have a glass of water, and I've got some tools. So I'm going to be building this kit, which I've now had for a year, and with all this nice weather we've got in the UK at the moment, I kind of would like to fly it, so I'm going to build it, and we're going to build it on stream. A few people on the stream the other evening expressed an interest in seeing that done, so we shall do so. We've already unboxed it, but I need to unbox it again because I put everything away. Yep, I know what that is. So I've got the instructions, which I will need shortly, which tell me how to go about doing this, and then I need all the bits. And the first bit I need is the bit that's right at the bottom, which you would guess, wouldn't you? So let's see if I can dig about in here, and let's see. There's not enough room in my studio. I need a bigger studio. That's coming. ASAP Stripper, good evening, welcome. Nice to see you on the stream this evening. Thank you for watching. Doing something different tonight. This looks like one of those frisbee things that, well, I as a kid had, that you could throw and would come back to you like a boomerang. I'm not going to try it. It's carbon fibre and I don't want to break it, and carbon fibre isn't cheap stuff. So I don't really want to get all the bits out at the same time, just because it's going to be a little bit awkward trying to fit everything on the desk. So I'm going to put most of the bits to one side, and I'll just pull them out as I need them. How are you doing? Oh, excuse me. Just had my tea and I need to keep drinking. So how are you doing, ASAP Stripper? How are you this evening? I say evening, I've no idea which time zone you're in, but it's evening for me. Okay, although I've built a fair few helicopters now, at least 3 of them. The one thing you kind of learn is it's a good idea to follow the instructions. Okay, so it is telling me that I need these spacers here in order to put them on the frame. And it says here these screws that are supplied with it will only go in one of the holes, the other holes aren't big enough. I'm not sure if that's a challenge or or just a warning. Yeah. So these posts, I gather, are what the upper part of the body gets mounted on. Nearly. I'm not quite sure whether there's an upside down or a right side up. So what I'm going to do is the sharp bits on the top. Is it? Can't tell the difference. So I'll do it this way. And I needed a slightly bigger screwdriver as well. In theory, all I need to do to build this is a couple of a screwdriver or two, and I've got some jeweler's screwdrivers here if I need any tiny ones. A pair of pliers, which I can use to hold the nuts in place. I could use some small spanners, but to be honest, I don't really feel like going out and getting them from my workshop, and I don't really need them. And then a pair of these are side cutters, or end cutters rather, because I know we've got some small cable ties to cut at some point. So let's just tuck things out of the way to make sure I've got enough space. Right. So just a matter of a bit like building Lego, I guess, or Meccano. If anybody's familiar with Meccano, it's all metal stuff these days. When I was a lad, as they say, we had both plastic and metal Meccano. I can probably tighten most of these up by hand. I've got to be careful actually not to over tighten these, because these being nylon bolts, they will actually stretch, and once they stretch more than just sort of tight, they then become very weak and they will break fairly easily. But with just a very tiny stretch, what happens is they kind of almost work like a bit like a lock nut. Night Watch, good evening, and welcome to the stream. 3D bloke, indeed, a jellycopter, or a chiliopter, as I occasionally used to say. Although it's quite hard to reverse those first two characters. Yep, we have a quad, a mini quad as opposed to a micro quad. And by the way, in case anybody's wondering, this is not a drone. It has no autonomous capabilities whatsoever. This has to be flown. And whilst it will, if it's set up correctly, it will just hover by itself. If it's disturbed in any shape or form, it will need to be manually corrected. It won't correct itself like a drone would do. This will turn out to be my third quadcopter, which is I'll then have a small one which is not much bigger than the centre of this. I've got a bigger one which is at least at least twice, 2.5, 3, somewhere between twice and 3 times the wingspan of this, and then this one to sit in the middle. No particular reason other than I just fancied another quadcopter. I find them easier to fly than single rotor helicopters, but you know they're different. They're not, you know, it's not a case of one's better than the other. They do different jobs. They work in different ways, and they're just fun to do. You know, to have a different one. Yeah, actually I'm not quite sure what this one costs, but it's not made anymore. It's only about 150 quid, I think, free. But as I say, unfortunately it's out of production. That's how long I've had it as a kit. Ooh. Hey, we get to do the motors next. Let me just put these screws away, and then I don't lose them. Okay, so I now dig out the motors. These are brushless outrunner motors, so named because of the way in which they're constructed. They're called brushless because they're not a DC motor. DC motors of the sort that would sort of be in, I don't know, an electric drill or something like that. They have carbon brushes in order to conduct the electricity to the turning rotor. These don't. The turning rotor is just magnets. It's kind of like a DC motor backwards, and they're driven with three-phase electricity. Each of these wires represents a phase of electricity, and I don't know if you can see the wires go to the inside, and you can probably just see inside that there's the windings, and they're what as they get energized in a sequence around, they drag the magnets which are attached to this outside around with it, and because it's on the outside, that's why it's called an outrunner. The outside is the bit that runs around. You can get in-runner motors. Essentially they're usually just this with a can over the top, but same sort of idea. And these are a lot more controllable and a lot more powerful than a DC motor. So now I need to fasten them using some tiny screws, which are also in this pack somewhere. I know they're in this pack somewhere. Oh, that's not them. That's not them. This is where I start to get... oh, there we go. I was about to start and get worried as to whether I'd lost them or not. No, Naozi, good evening. Welcome to the stream. Thank you very much for joining this evening. I hope you are feeling really well. Okay. So I'm reading the instructions which are in this booklet alongside. It gives me some pictures. I've got to mount the motor looking a bit like that, and insert the screws. Oh, screws from above. Okay. Yep, okay, so screws go in from the top down through the carbon plate, and I'm reasonably sure the reason they do that is so that there's no chance of the screws catching the outrunner, although there's quite a lot of distance there, so it's highly unlikely, but we shall follow the instructions. I've got no particular reason why I shouldn't, so it's I'm not about to deviate just for the sake of it. So we do these one at a time. What I'm going to do is, yeah, then it says, oh, that's going to be clever. How am I supposed to do that then? The instructions indicate that what I should do is mount it such that the wires come out at about 45 degrees. There isn't any mounting holes to do that with. Mounting holes have it going straight down like that, or it has it coming straight out like that, and then it says don't bend them. Well, don't bend them a lot, and I can understand that because these would be relatively weak points if I start bending them there. But let me just see, where is the connecting to these once they're mounted is going to be the speed controller, which actually converts the DC battery into the AC, the three-phase AC, which drives this, and that gets fastened onto the end of here as well. So I'm just looking at how it's expecting to mount that, and then yeah, I don't see any problem particularly. It's just odd that they say. I wonder if it works differently if this is upside down. Nope, it wouldn't, would it? No. Oh well. So I have a choice now. I can either mount these with that poking out like that, or I can mount them with it going down the arm. I'm going to do it with it going down the arm. That way there's less chance of knocking these if I catch anything on the side. Decisions, you see. Even though the kits, clearly whoever wrote the kit, wrote the instructions, did so either before they had the kit built, or they have had a slightly different version of it and they haven't revised the instructions. Which is not fantastic. You would hope that they would have correct instructions, but how's the stream this evening, 3D? You getting any dropouts or anything? I'm still ingesting through the Netherlands, so I am interested, and I've got my new microphone as well, so I'm interested in whether the audio sounds okay. And of course, just to be really awkward, I shut up when I say that so you can't tell. Now then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all 4 screws in before I make any attempt to tighten these up, because there'll be and there is a slight amount of leeway or slop, because the holes aren't an exact perfect size, and if I tighten these up before I put the other screws in, what I'll almost certainly find is I can't get them through because the holes just don't quite line up. So one of the tips is always put all the screws through first, leaving the nuts loose, and then afterwards tighten them up. Hopefully I won't get my hands in the way too much, but these are a bit fiddly. They're a 2mm diameter bolt. And I just can't get my fingers in, so I'm going to use a pair of pliers. Useful tool for doing things. And I'll try and keep it in. I'll try and keep it in shot as well. I once recorded myself making an articulated truck. That well, the trailer for it is about 3 feet long. It's interesting trying to keep that in shot on a webcam. Okay, so that's the first motor in place. So what I'm going to do now is just tighten up these nuts, and then we can put the second nut on the bottom. No special technique really needed for these. You don't need to do cross tightening or anything like that really. It's not particularly, you know, we're not working to any torque settings or anything like that. Oh, that's good. I'm glad the audio's clearer. That's great. I've just bought, you know, I mentioned on my last stream, but I've just bought a new microphone. I did have a headset with a microphone on, quite a decent microphone as well, but I don't particularly like wearing headsets because I get rather they get really sort of warm, and I wear glasses, and the ear cups press against the glass arms against my ears, and basically it hurts after a while. And I've got the wire to contend with. It's, you know, it's always kind of in the way and things like that. So I've actually got myself a, relatively speaking, a professional mic, a Rode M3. Not the best and not the worst. It's a relatively pricey microphone, I suppose, compared to a lot that, you know, you can get for broadcasting. Sorry, for webcasting. But it is designed for voice and studio work. So I'm just trying to get this screwdriver in here. It's, as you might have gathered, I can't go straight down. In fact, I wonder if I'm just going to try and see if a jeweler screwdriver will fit in. It's probably not quite a big enough end on it, but it does fit better. There we go. And it's an analog microphone, is this, so it's feeding into a mixer. No. Why does that feel like it's spinning? Don't like that. I have a feeling that one's stripped. Yeah. One thing you can do very easily with these is you can strip the threads on them as well. Okay. Yeah, it is actually quite a flat mic. I can probably cut the bottom a little bit at the very low bottom. I haven't got. I'm just feeding this in raw sound. I could push it through a digital mixer as well, but I'm kind of at this kind of a little bit reluctant to increase the delay. But I might have a play about with that later free. Literally, it arrived in the post this afternoon. It took me a little bit of messing about to get the thing installed. But proper analog mic with an XLR connector as well. Now this second nut I'm putting on here will just act like a lock nut, which will stop them vibrating off. And it says tighten them by hand, so I am doing. and I first plugged the analog to digital converter in, Windows refused to tell me there was a microphone there. And it took me an awful long time to realise it was, it didn't know it was a microphone. It was a line in connector, which of course is what it actually is, but it was about 20 minutes before it suddenly clicked. Because of course if you plug a USB mic in, it knows it's a microphone because the USB device says it's a microphone. But with an analog to digital converter, it's just a sound source. You might be getting some large pops and things. I'm just going to move the microphone just to show you. I'll tell you what surprised me is I didn't realise how big this thing was going to be. It's somewhat larger diameter than I was expecting. And now I'm off axis, so it may well sound a bit funny, but yeah, it kind of surprised me, did that. I tell you what, it's nice and heavy though. The only thing was now, I don't have a mic stand. I thought it was smaller, and I thought I'd be able to mount it to a small tripod I've got. And it was sort of suggesting it came with a stand. Well, it does come with a stand adapter, you know, to actually put the thing in, but an adapter, a threaded adapter to go in the bottom, to go on to what I thought was a camera connector. It's not. It's somewhat bigger, so I now need to get myself a small desk stand. But for the minute, the Pyro controller acts as a very nice mic stand at the moment. Right, next one of these. I've got to go on with actually building tonight rather than spend the night talking. And actually, here we go. I'm not looking at, you know, I'm absorbed in this, not looking at chat. Tillybug, good evening. Nice to see you. Welcome back to the stream. Sure, yeah, I looked at the Shure mics. Problem I really had when looking for all of the mics is everybody assumes you're going to do something which is called close miking. Basically, you're going to hold it up to your mouth, or you're going to stand with it up to your mouth. And they all start talking and then about things like pop filters and shock mounts and things like that. Or they're talking about voiceover work, which isn't like this. It's completely different. So voice broadcasting, it's really difficult to find information out about microphones, and the Shure stuff was somewhat ambiguous, and I wasn't really confident about it. This one, at least, well, there's Shure, there's Rode, there's, oh god, there's quite a few of them. Of the decent, even old school stuff, which you'll be familiar with free. And the one thing I like about the Rode website was they actually did give you some indication of what microphones were useful for voice use, like this, where the microphone doesn't have to be right up in your mouth, or rather, it doesn't have to be where people usually put it. Oh, it's cheap professional grade equipment, Night Watch. It is professional grade equipment, yes, but it's cheap professional grade equipment. I kind of would have liked the M5, but the M5 is at least twice the price of this microphone, and there's just no way I could afford that. I've still got to save up for it. I've kind of borrowed the money from my savings, so I've got to save up to replace that money. But I have, one of the things I kind of learned over the years is there's sort of no point in going too cheap. I mean, you can get microphones for a $5, you know, about $5–10, but then you kind of have to wonder why, generally speaking, professional mics, and I know there's a little bit of name in there and stuff, but they start at sort of the $100 mark, and there's a reason for it. But yeah, it's kind of like it is, if you can afford to do it, and it's a case of save up if you can't really. It's a lot better to invest in decent equipment, because otherwise what happens is you get something, you really either disappointed or it just doesn't do what you want it to do, and then you end up spending more, because eventually you get to the point where you buy the thing that the professional stuff in the first place. The trick is knowing whether you actually need the really expensive stuff, and I looked at these and I don't. This M3 would do all that the M5 would do for me, and it was half the price. Okay, I'm beginning to think I should have got a magnifying glass as well to do this with. Tilly, I'm fine today, thank you very much, Tilly. Sorry, I'm just catching up. It's a bit warm actually. It's been a hot day up here in Yorkshire. Oh, it's been a really sunny day, but a little bit cooler. But as the evenings come along, the wind, the slight breeze has dropped, and it's going to get quite warm this evening. It's already, it's over 26 degrees here in the studio, which is what, about 82 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's quite warm. Yeah, a lot of the older one. Oops, I'm clipping. I might need to turn that gain down a bit if it's going to clip. A lot of the older mics are still really good mics, free. I mean, back then, of course, because you got less of the ability to post-process, a lot of mics were tailored as well. These days, they're more flat responses, and people are doing post-processing. Poor man buys twice. I wouldn't exactly call it that, because it's more a person who buys cheap buys twice. Being poor doesn't mean that you have to buy cheap, it just means you have to wait a bit longer. And yeah, Free's right with the airbrush gear as well. I mean, I'm not quite sure I could stretch to a custom micron or something like that, but yeah, I didn't go for the Chinese knockoffs, if you describe them that way. I went for a fairly decent brand and went for something which was well, it's a little bit above their entry level, but not much. It was good enough for me to, well, it's good enough for lots of people to get a really good good result with. So I wasn't going to be hampered by the airbrush. It was down to my skill as to whether or not I could actually use it. So it wasn't there. There are some airbrushes where you're never going to get a good result whatever you do. It's like I've got some chisels that are blunt, and I've tried sharpening them for a long time and I can't get them sharp. And they were cheap, but they were bought for me as a present, and I will make them work eventually. But that's an example of buying cheap, you end up buying again, and there's no way I'd have got good result out of those things. and then, you know, and because of that, I'd never actually know whether I just wasn't any good at carving or it was the tools. Yeah, I can't take the heat either particularly. I much prefer. I kind of much prefer cooler weather. I don't mind the hot weather, as long as it's cool. So cool breeze, and it's a little bit awkward because I've got to close the windows as we're getting towards evening here, because I don't particularly want to have all the midges and things coming in, as there's quite often around here. And I also want to isolate the sound, because if there's people outside and it was relatively noisy. But it means, of course, I'm stuck with the heat. I could put an air conditioning unit on, but then you wouldn't hear me. And unfortunately you can see bits of me occasionally, so I can't go around with bathing shorts on or anything like that. Yeah, that doesn't mean that the new stuff isn't almost as good, free, but you know, they were a lot of the older stuff was very robustly engineered, shall we say. And they just sound different, you know. That's just really all that's about it. But it really is a case of if you've got decent gear, what's the reason? There's no reason to replace it. You know, it's doing the job. Oh, 30 years isn't. I've got an amplifier in the lot. Actually, I was about to say I've got an amplifier and stack in the loft. Actually, got one downstairs that's 30 years old, and that the one downstairs, although they're separates, it wasn't anything particularly fancy. It was all right. It's not what an audiophile would start jumping up and down about, but it sounded just fine. But that's 30 years old now. Yeah, no, blown a few. Yeah. I mean, to some extent, a lot of gear these days, especially for the consumer market, is not really built for a long lifetime, because they know something else is going to come out in a year's time, or has already come out, which makes it obsolete, or at least, you know, people will want to buy the next whatever it is. Bubbles the Monkey, good evening, welcome. Yeah, and then you get certain companies that thrive by purposely making their own things obsolescence. Okay, yeah. A lot. Well, I'm gonna say a lot. I don't know. But of course, most of the modernish stuff is all solid state. But it's designed to a price, so you don't have. It gets described as headroom, but you don't get the over-engineered bit, which allows it to, you know, survive a transient on the mains or something like that. And to most people, they just go out and buy another amp. Yeah, to my mind, I'd just replace the output transistors and carry on, but these days all that sort of stuff is built into the digital stream, and it's really hard to do any sort of work on the stuff. That was the company I was thinking of, particularly with their iPhones. I am sure they leave stuff out on purpose just so they can add it next year, which is then, of course, for everybody to go out and buy a new phone or whatever. Yeah. Can't particularly comment on women's clothing, but I mean that's what fashion's all about, isn't it? Really, to some extent. It's already, fashion is already obsolete by the time it's hit the high street. No, well, okay, don't know. It's a matter of opinion, of course, Night Watch. But what it feels like for the phones is that, for example, what they call near field communications, NFC. It's what ID cards use, that you go into buildings with, you touch the card to a reader, there's no contact. And in the UK, credit cards have got that sort of capability as well, and you see it on things like the Oyster card in London for the transport. Apple could have added that 3-4 years ago, and they didn't. Some of the stuff that they added in this recent update was there before. They could have added it before. There's been no real change in the market. They've just left it out, and it really does feel like, we'll leave that as a reason to upgrade to the iPhone 7 next year. Yeah, and 3 there's got I think the desktop computers feels more like them deliberately making something obsolete to force you to buy something, more than withholding capability as such. I'm not explaining that really well at all. I mean, there's no reason why 3's machine cannot run the latest software from Apple. As he says, it's more powerful than absolutely everything, but they've just made a decision that, the installer's going to say, this machine, no, you can't do it. Not that it's not capable of doing it, and that's bad. RFID chip, that's right, Bubbles. They've been doing it for years, though, haven't they, 3? I mean, it's a heck of a long time that Apple have been doing that sort of thing. I have to go that way. Okay, lol, good evening, welcome to the stream. Nice to see you again. And how are you this evening? Is it that it's not compatible 3, or they haven't bothered to make it compatible? Because I mean, to some extent, you can put any video card in your machine, so that they could even sell you the latest video card if it was really that bad. Oh, I'm sorry you're tired. Here's where I go. Chill out, have a rest, and enjoy the stream. I get kind of miffed with the with Apple. I've got an iPad 1, which is a decent machine. I got it because I had an iPod, and they were, at the time the Android stuff wasn't very good. But now, of course, all they've done is they've done their usual. It's because it's obsolete. They're choosing not to run the latest operating system, and then you get people with apps that don't make them. There's no reason why they can't run on the earlier iOS versions. They just choose to go with the latest one, and it gets really annoying. And so one of the reasons I got the iPad was that I'd be able to read magazines, colour magazines on it, and for a while that worked really well. But now the latest versions of all the magazines won't run on the iPad 1. But I'm not about to replace the thing. I am not going to go out and buy a latest iPad. If anything, I will get an Android machine. Don't use Skype though, so I wouldn't know about that. Yeah, when they changed to the Intel. Okay. Yeah, well, I've got an iPod, does exactly the same thing. Sits there, just plays music. In fact, I these days it only gets used when I go on holiday. But 8 gigs of space. I haven't looked at. Just well, I was about to say I haven't been forced, but I've just been prompted rather a lot to update the phone to the latest version of iOS. And the only reason I've got the phone is because I've got the iPod and the iPad. It seemed a bit silly to go for a different technology, but yeah. Yeah, I don't use Skype at all. So the nearest I get actually is at work. I use Microsoft Link, which is kind of the Skype-ish technology built into Instant Messenger. I've kind of haven't really got any reason to use Skype, so was it the sort of update that wipes its previous state bubbles? Because you should therefore be able to undo it if generally they only tend to make critical updates wipe out so that you can't be uninstalled. That's getting quite heavy actually. I'm surprised. Now that they've got the four motors on there, it's got a bit of a weight to it. And apparently, according to the instructions here, they used nylon nuts, even though metal ones would be stronger, because if you have an accident, the nuts will pull out and strip, reducing the damage so you don't break the main carbon frame. They also save significant weight. And the cynical bit in me says they also save a lot in manufacturing costs as well. Yeah, unlucky phone calls don't cost me anything, so I use a landline. The business I work for pays for the calls, so. Yeah, well, I'm on Windows 7 Bubbles, and they're about to stop supporting. Well, they have stopped supporting that anyway, apart from security updates. I'm going to be forced to go to Windows 8. Might wait for 10. Just so that I don't have to pay for it, because 10 in theory should be free, or at least at the moment. The only problem I have with I generally keep up with operating systems, but when 8 came out, things like Painter, which is, you know what, I have a terrible memory for who makes Painter. Cobble, that's it. Cobble Painter wasn't compatible with Windows 8 for a long time, and neither I think was PaintShop for a while. And since they're sort of two of my biggest applications, it was stay away from the update. That's when you wonder why on earth OBS manages not to be able to broadcast decent sound. Yeah, Coral, yeah, you're right. So I understand Bubbles, but don't really know for certain. I mean, until they actually launch it. I mean, in the business world at the moment, they're even talking about Windows 10 or possibly what succeeds it as going open source, which could be interesting. Okay, we now fit the speed controllers. Each motor has its own speed controller, which, as I said earlier, converts the DC to the AC, three-phase AC, but it also controls the speeds of the motors. So I shall dig those out. Generally speaking, the speed controllers and the motors are the most expensive bits of a quad, mainly because you've got 4 of them. Yeah, but Apple's only just started doing that, haven't they, Bubbles? I think. Well, feel now, but I can't help wondering actually why Apple are doing that, or did that. It seems almost out of character, because they were charging people for the upgrade to the operating systems, and then suddenly started not. Maybe it's because they were doing it for things like the iPod and stuff. Yeah, unless free, I guess it's always possible that Skype could be using like an automatic gain control. Right, these are the speed controllers. These 3 wires here go to the motor, and then there's a wire there that will go ultimately to the radio, and a wire that goes to the power supply. Well then, what we do now is we fit one of these on each of these arms, and it's suggesting it's done like that, and then we feed a small tie wrap and hold it in place with a small tie wrap, which they provide, assuming I can find it in this box. There we go. Why is it whenever you're looking for something, it's always in the last place you look? Yeah, it's all download, isn't it, Turfy? Lizard Soul, good evening, welcome. Not exactly a new hobby. I've been flying model helicopters now, well, the first one I tried to fly was about 40 years ago, but actually flying them is probably now about 5 or 6 years. This just happens to be a kit that's been sat in me sort of in the studio here for about the past year, and with all the nice weather, and I kept looking at it and thinking I really ought to build that, and so I'm building it on stream. That way I get to talk to you guys instead of doing art and then not having the time to build this, and you get to see a helicopter built as well. And where's Lost? Because Lost wanted to see this done as well. Right. I hate using, well, I don't hate using ties, but the thing about them is, especially these little tiny ones that they give you here, it's a case of they're a one-time thing only. It's almost impossible to undo them, and it's kind of like, if I get this wrong, I don't have that many ties. Now then, is it going to suggest to me which way I should put these through?
May I speak?
The sound will be back now, guys. Just my wife was just explaining she's just seen a hedgehog in the back garden which looked like it was building, she described it as a nest. So she was just telling me all about that. So sorry the sound went off, but so all I'm doing is just tie wrapping these down. To some extent they're not being pulled tight or anything like that really, they're just there to stop it moving around. Yeah. Now on this particular quad, one of the things that they do that this quad has here is all the motors rotate in the same direction, but a quad gets a lot of its stability from the fact that the rotors rotate in different directions. So what they're actually doing on here though is they're using, no, they must, I was about to say something then which doesn't make sense to me. So I wonder if they've cheated. No, they can't do. What I was about to say is a quad normally works by two of the rotors rotating in one direction and two of the rotors rotating in the other. So like these two rotate this way and these two rotate this way. What that means is because there's a balance, it tends not to want to turn. Let's get into the technical thing, but with a single rotored helicopter, the reason why there's a tail rotor on a helicopter is because the main blade goes round, and the equal and opposite force thing means the body tries to go the other way, and the tail rotor is there to stop it rotating the other way. The way they do it on quads is because there's no tail. As I say, they have two rotors going one way, two rotors going the other. And because the rotors go in the opposite direction, you get propellers where you'll see it later, but propellers which are designed to work with the opposite rotation. So there's two here marked yellow and two marked red. That's so that you can get the right one. But inherently, all these motors are going to turn and turn the same way, and when the instructions here are going at this moment in time into great pains to say, when I connect these up to the speed controllers up to the motors, I must go yellow to yellow, red to red and black to black. But if I do that, all these rotors are going to turn in the same way, because these things are not marked in any way. It's not like there's because what they could have done is arrange for two of these speed controllers to force the motor to go in the opposite direction, but then they'd have to be marked, and you'd have to choose the correct one, and they're not marked at all, and it doesn't say anything about that. So I'm actually thinking it's going to all this trouble to tell me how to wire these up, and at the end of it it's going to tell me to change some of the connections. So sorry, I've not been keeping up with with chat. Yeah, apparently this is quite a large one as well. She just watched it, the hedgehog that is, watched it drag a great big pile of moss across the patio. I like waffles. Okay, welcome, good evening, hello, and what's a squire's nest? Oh, squirrel's nest. Yeah, we there's a place that we visit fairly regularly that has squirrels as well, and they're always nicking bird fruit from the bird tables. A bit of a fun thing. Yeah, that's right, Free, it would. No, it doesn't work that way, Free. I'll explain in a second. It's a helicopter. I like waffles. Quad rotor, quad as in 4, and rotor as in propellers. The rotor bit is a little bit of a misnomer because they are truly propellers, but no, Fee, because these types of controllers just work from off to full on. There is no reverse on them. You can get speed controllers that work in, say, model cars or boats, where they'll go sort of from reverse to off to full forward, and it actually does cause the motor to spin backwards, because the motors don't really care which direction they're spinning. But for aircraft, they're always only forward only speed controllers, so they're not exactly set. And all 4 speed, well, I was about to say all 4 speed controllers will get the same signal. They kind of do. It's not as though they're sent one that says, you know, go backwards, because they just don't have that capability. Okay, I'm just more or less finger tight on these things. I'm going to snip them off in a little while. I could do it now, but just force of habit. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. I'll read these instructions again. Excuse me if I'm just a little bit quiet. Why I'm saying interesting is I've just noticed on these speed controllers, the labels on 2 of them are on the opposite side. And at least I think they're on the opposite side. Yeah. This speed controller is now the same way up as that one. And when I look at the circuit board, and the labels are on different sides. Oh no. No, it is. Just for some reason they've put the label on this one on the other side. I thought at first, as I was looking through them, that 2 of them had the label on the opposite side, and I thought, I wonder if what they've done is they've done that to indicate it's going to spin backwards, if you see what I mean, like Free was suggesting earlier. But they're not. These 3 are all the same side. Just for some reason, this one, the label's on the opposite side. If I look at the red wire, it's on the opposite side to them. So, but these 3 are all the labels on the same side with reference to that red wire. Oh well, sorry. Okay. Yeah. Well, where we visit, yes, the place we visit has got. They keep rabbits, they keep hens, but there's a wildlife around. There's what is there? There's they quite often see swans and ducks and things like that. Actually, just nearby, near where my wife's mother lives, they have a wild peacock. Just and it's been around for a few years as well. It just keeps turning up and you know, flying around. Well, flying into trees, I guess, and that sounds daft. It doesn't go around sort of like flying into a glass wall or anything like that. You know, it lands on a tree and you can see it up there, and you can see it on the ground sometimes with its fan spread. But kind of an unusual thing to see around. It doesn't matter which way I'm putting these cable ties through. I'm just putting them through on the bottom because it's easier for me, and they lie flat with the when it goes through the locking thing here on the end. Don't know what you call it, this locking thing, ratchet, whatever it is. Make it sure it's set in position, and then just apply a little tightening force. As I say, it doesn't need to be excessive. Essentially, they won't slip out. They're held with quite good friction, even though that's not tight in any way. Bunny rabbits. Seagulls. Yeah, seagulls. Make no comment on seagulls. Noisy little things, or big things, and seagulls that nick fish and chips out of your hand. Not this one. Waffles. I like waffles. In fact, I've never actually known I suppose there's no particular reason why you couldn't throw it like a frisbee. It would be really interesting to try and stabilise it, but this one requires a full remote control. It's not Wi-Fi from a phone, and it doesn't it doesn't carry a camera. It could, I guess. It'd have to be a very lightweight camera. This isn't a drone. The drones are expensive, yes. Even some of the smaller ones. Yeah. I kind of I like these because I like flying them. Although I must admit, I've got a little tiny quad, which would sit in the space of the middle of this. You know, it literally is that diameter. And I've got a bigger one, and I actually like flying the bigger one more because it's more stable. I would literally be quite happy to fly the big quad within inches of my face, and I kind of have done. And it'll just sit there, a bit like fish in water. It just sits there. The little one, I wouldn't let anywhere near me. The little one won't hurt if it hits you. It has hit me at times. It sort of, you know, it's a bit like a small slap on your hand, and that's about it. And the big quad would hurt quite a bit. I'd probably cut myself if I hit myself with the blades. But it's just a lot more stable, and I've got a lot more confidence in it. It's weird. Of course, the helicopters I've got, I wouldn't let within 3 feet of me, but they're slightly different. I am kind of amazed at just how stable quads are, and the drone stuff, which it's. I mean, I know why the drones were kind of invented, and you know, and the fact that the camera platform, and they have to be stable and stuff like that. And of course, you know, when you want to sell things like that to in quotes, the masses, shall we say, you know, to anybody who doesn't really want to learn how to fly, the thing basically just has to fly itself. And therefore, you know, they're super stable, and they've got the GPS and all that sort of stuff on, so you just go, I want it to go over there, and you don't have to understand it or anything like that, or even try and fly it towards yourself. That's the fun thing with model aircraft, when you're actually flying them. If you fly it towards yourself, left and right are reversed, and with a helicopter, the fact that left and right is reversed is quite a big deal, because they are unstable craft inherently, and if you're not quick enough to react, then they'll tumble out the sky. Will the model helicopters, or certainly they'll take a heck of a lot of recovering. Planes are generally speaking less susceptible to that. You just have a little bit more control with a plane in terms of stability, but yeah, it's fun. It'd be flashing, I guess, is it? Yeah, attracts their attention. They'd probably mob it at night watch, I suspect, if in that respect, if they felt threatened by it. Yep, that's what happened to my wife, 3D. Tourist, you see, not realising, walked out on the beach with the fish and chips. Dear. Okay, so we've got those on. Let's cut the bottom. So I'm going to cut these ties. And leave myself a little bit of spare, just in case I do want to tighten them up a little bit. If I leave myself a little bit of spare, I can tighten them up, and I can always cut it off afterwards. Again, it's one of those things that you can't undo once you've done it. So, and I'm not sure whether they've given me any spare. I'm guessing, you know, small ties like this aren't particularly hard to come by, but okay. Connect them up, it says. Connect them up and then make them nice and tidy with a cable tie. Ah, yeah. I was talking earlier about the, connecting red to red, black to black, and yellow to yellow, and the fact that that would make them all spin the same way. I've just found the note in the instructions that says some of the motors need to run the other way, so connect them differently. And it's actually now giving me a direction as to which motors have to run which way. So this motor runs clockwise, this one runs clockwise, and these two run anti-clockwise. And so the clockwise ones I wire up as per colour, red, yellow and black. The anti-clockwise, I just swap any two colours, which is interesting. I've been on quite a few forums where beginners have on to do with cars, boats, quadcopters, helicopters, where beginners have said, but it's going the wrong way, either it's rotating, the motor's rotating the wrong way, and they when they get the response, just swap any two wires. Invariably it comes back which two, and it's kind of any two, but well, I need to know what colours to swap, and it doesn't matter. it's just weird. It doesn't matter, and it's a funny thing that forum threads and discussions, they'll go on for about 10 replies with from people going, but how do I know which colours to swap? Ah dear, that's the fun thing. If you actually were to follow if you were to plot out on a graph the way the signals are sent down these wires, it becomes possible to see why reversing any two of them work, but apart from that, it's a really hard thing to describe. To get into technicalities, it's all about phase relationships, but I'm not going to get into technicalities. Right, so I just plug these together. I'll try and keep the wires neat while I'm doing it. Or as neat as I can. Whenever you're doing stuff like this, it always, or I find it always helps to try and keep things neat as you go along, because if you suddenly find that the wires are wrapped around each other, it becomes quite difficult sometimes, especially on helicopters where you've got limited room in the body to try and to try and sort it all out after the fact, when they're just wrapped up so much you just can't get them to go where you want. I need to make sure they're all together, and then somehow I need to tie these together in a neat way, and they won't. They want to sit like that, and I ideally want them to sit in a line, but I'm trying really hard not to bend them too much. Tell you what, let me wire the others up and then we'll come back to that. So these also want to go the same way. Yeah. Fiddly things. It's the only problem with small models. Everything's tiny and fiddly. Do the black one next. When you have quite big hands, it's can be a challenge. Okay. Yeah, well, in my wife's case, they actually, the fish and chips, they come in the plastic, the fold over trays. Actually, there's about, I say about 3 or 4, I don't actually know, there's quite a lot of them. Literally came down, grabbed the fish and lifted off with it. They didn't keep hold of it. I guess because there was about 3 of them all trying to grab it at the same time, and it dropped on the thing. But those things are not small, as Free will know. I mean, the wingspan must be at least easily 2.5 feet. Right in my wife's face, and it didn't half startle her. Made me jump as well, to be honest. And then I say that was right at this sort of distance from the camera. It's half a roast chicken. It's about the same. Yeah, no, it's bigger. It's quite a big thing, isn't it? Yeah. Oh. Well, at least he had his tea. Saved you some money with that. I think ours have brought home 2 goldfish once, and they were actually still alive, and we actually had nothing to put them in. They ended up being in the sink overnight because it was tap water. They eventually succumbed because they don't like the chlorine in the water. Oh, yeah. that's kind of true, Bubbles. Out of an empty cardboard box. There is something about a cardboard box, an empty cardboard. Well, a cardboard box. Never mind an empty one. I guess most of you have seen Junior and Felix, who's the same size on stream. They're fairly chunky cats, and I've seen them try and get in. Yeah, I've seen them try and actually sit and curl up in a box this size. Now on stream, that's probably difficult to realise, but you know that's my hand. It's about 6 inches long and about 3 inches wide, and I've seen them try to actually curl up in a box that size. They'll stand in it and sit down in it and try and turn around, and yeah, dear, they're always fascinated by boxes. On the bigger boxes, I can sort of understand, because they've got something surrounding them, you know, so nothing's going to come at them from the side. Nothing can see them. The only way anything's going to get them is through the top, and animals tend not to just leap into things. So I can see the big boxes, but little things like that, just I don't understand. Right, which 2 water wires shall I cross? Don't cross the streams, cross the streams. I could take a poll, couldn't I? Do I swap the red and the black, or the yellow and the black, or the yellow and the red? And I could swap yellow and red here and red and black over there. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter in the slightest. I get to choose. The only problem is it twists the wires. They're laid out neatly to meet each other, and if I don't do that, they're going to get twisted. I'm going to keep the yellow one as yellow on this side. I'll swap the black and the red over. Yeah, there's a heck of, even though they're light things, there's a heck of a lot of mass in them. Don't cut the green wire. Yeah. Sorry, my hands are getting in the way of you seeing, but I shall try and remember. I do have to be a little bit careful when I finish with these to make sure that these wires aren't rubbing against the edge of the motor. Otherwise, it will just wear through them in no time flat. That felt a bit loose. Okay, let's do this other one. The only problem with helicopters is you always end up with this mass of wires to start with, and then you've got to tidy them away somehow. What colour shall I keep on this side? Let's keep the red one on this side, and just for fun. So we swap the black and the yellow. The discussion on patience, which we've had a couple of times on stream, and about me saying with that, where I don't really need patience. I was just thinking then, this is where I need patience. I was trying to get this wire just to come out of here, just round there, and it just wasn't quite doing it. That's when I need patience. That's when it really gets to me and I get really tense. But it just won't quite do that. I never have a problem with that at all. I like that one, Free. That's good. Yeah, I like that. I haven't seen one, but whatever. The one that suddenly came to my mind that I'd like to see is, I'm bomb disposal on the back. Something that says, "Why do you think I'm running?" Good evening, Lost. Welcome. You're a bit late to the stream because I'm doing the helicopter. And, yeah. I had to start it. I couldn't sit around for an hour or two, unfortunately. Now then, I've now got to try and make the wiring neat on these. With the stingy so-and-sos, they've given me just exactly the right number of cable ties. At least I think so. Right, so this is a frustrating bit in a way, because normally what I'd love to be able to do with these is orientate this wiring such that it was in line, but they really don't want to do that. I don't want to sort of start trying to bend the wires here where they come out of the motor, because they're relatively speaking delicate. They're not, they're not going to snap the instant you touch them, but you start bending them and putting force on it, and it's a very easy thing to do. So there we go. Now then, can I make them sit like that? Actually, what it's talking about is putting a tie just around the 3 bullets themselves. I'm kind of considering putting it around the whole. It doesn't really matter. It's really just about here. It is really just about keeping them neat. And out of the way, really. You don't want them to come into contact with the motors at all. So I'm really just looking for a way to try and keep them in position. In fact, what I am also considering at this point is just using a piece of tape, because a piece of tape being wider will hold them in position, whereas a cable tie like this, if I just put it around the wires, of course they can move, and if I put it around the whole of the base here, there's nothing actually to hold the cable tie in place, and it's very likely to slip off, and then they're loose anyway. I can put a cable tie which goes around this post, because there'll be something on top of it, but then it doesn't hold them particularly neat either. Decisions. Oh, it's alright there. No, it's not that. It really isn't that critical. I'm just kind of a stickler for neat. They look nicer if they're neat. I mean, like that, it sort of looks a bit of a mess, doesn't it? But if you can get all the wires neat, it looks better, and it's also easier to spot if something goes wrong, like if a wire comes disconnected and it's flapping about, it sort of stands out. So I'm really sort of just that's really all I'm doing. There's nothing particularly zero tolerance about it. Actually, I wonder if I do that. No, that didn't work. Yeah. Vibration as well can force things to be loose. So if they're not sort of held reasonably securely and they can vibrate, then again that might, can cause them to wires either to come apart or eventually a stress fracture. Yeah, I've just decided how I'm going to do it. I'm going to what I've done is I am wrapping this cable tie around. Can I show you on here? I'm sort of wrapping it around the like 6 wires, if you like, just so I'm holding that loop in together. Not great, but Pork Ranger 69, thank you very much for following. That's most kind of you. I'm glad you're enjoying the content this evening. That's hope I'll see you back again. We do different things, so don't always build, well, don't always, we've never built a helicopter before, and we're possibly not going to do so again, but thank you. I am not going to make that comment, and that might intrigue all of you now, but I'm not going to tell you what the comment is I'm not going to make. Now this isn't going to look as neat as I'd like it to do, but there's not a lot I can do about it. As I say, what I might do is use a piece of tape afterwards. So it's hard to keep my hands out of the way. I might, what I possibly will do when I finish this is just wrap a small piece of tape just around over the top, just to hold these so they don't, in line, just because it's neat. And again, I shall leave these a little bit long to allow me to cut pull them tighter if I need to. Yeah, it's getting that way, isn't it? It looks like this will be going into another stream. I thought I'd finish this tonight. For those of you that might not have realised what Free has just seen what the time is and realised she's got a stream starting in about 10 minutes time. So that's why he suddenly had a slight panic. And those of you that don't know, 3D bloke there is an airbrush artist, He also paints with hairy sticks, which us airbrush artists know what we mean by that. It's a sort of a slight in joke, and it's kind of a little bit disparaging against people who paint that are not airbrush artists. He says, I'm looking for a hairy stick just to show you, but it's a normal paintbrush. And it's just one of those anyway, it's just a little bit of fun poking, really, at a hairy stick. It's a stick that's hairy. But he does some of that work as well. Don't know what you're doing tonight, Free. I think you're doing your xenomorph. Are you going to finish your do some more work with the backpack, which is the work that Free's doing, which is using paintbrushes. Either the airbrush or the paintbrush stuff is excellent work. I'd encourage you to take a look at his stream, and I say I'll be going live probably in about 10 minutes time, and that's roughly about when I'll be finishing for the evening. And so I'm not actually going to get this finished tonight, but we will almost certainly do it tomorrow night. This is kind of being the fiddliest bit is the wiring, and plus I talk a lot. And when I talk a lot, I talk with my hands, and if I talk with my hands, I can't make things. So what have we done there? Next it says we've got to sort out all these power leads. It's actually suggesting we stick them down with white sticky pads. Yeah. It's suggesting that each of these leads, or I think it's 2 by 2 of these red leads, need to be fastened down with sticky pads, sort of on the frame here, and that's where it gets a bit fiddly, as you can see. Yeah, and that's when I need patience. I seriously need patience to do things like that. They need to be stuck down with white pads, but they've got to be stuck down in such a way that you can get at the connectors to plug the other end in. And it's suggesting that we stick these down first. I'm inclined to put the other end of the plug in before I stick them down, because experience says that it will be quite fiddly after the fact. And when things are really fiddly after the fact, that's when rage quitting is a serious option. It's going well, thanks, Poke Ranger. It's been a warm day here, and it's warm here in the studio. Yeah, it's still warm. I'm getting used to it. That's how warm it is. So I'm just sort of test fitting, if you like, just playing about with this to see, because it sort of says, wrap your wires around these posts. Sort of a good idea, keeps them out of the way. Sort of a bad idea in that if you want to take one of these speed controllers out, you've got to take the whole thing apart. But there isn't a lot of space or a lot of scope to tie them out of the way without doing that. You can do it even with the top on, because you kind of just unscrew the one screw and lift it out and put it in, but it's a bit fiddly. Hopefully I never need to replace the things, but I've got to get sort of the other connector would have to go in there, and I'll show you where is it? It's in here somewhere. Yeah, it's what they call a Hydra head connector. And it's that one. Why have I got a... Don't know how to read the instructions, but each of these four go into one of these four, and it has to do it neatly. And you've got to be able to plug them in. And can you imagine when this is in like that, and you're trying to get in here to, and it's got to go in the right way up, and can you imagine how fiddly that's going to be? So I might well sort of put them in first, where I can sort of make sure they're really home properly, and then stick them down on sticky pads, because these are tight. These being the power connectors. Ow! I was looking at this and going, I wonder what this bare wire's for, and I don't actually know. I'm going to have to read the instructions, because my first thought when I saw that was, oh no, a wire's come loose. It isn't, but I don't know what it's for. But, yeah. Hi, have a good evening, Free. I'll see you shortly on your stream. See what you're up to. Yeah, I know. Don't know. Are you lost? Were you talking to me or to Free? If you're talking to me, I kind of understand. That's not a problem. It's not mandatory to watch my stream. It would be fun if I could make it with all of Twitch's viewers, but. No, it's not mandatory by any means. Oh, okay, fair enough. Oh, what do you stream, Poke Ranger? Okay, so I'm not keeping up on chat. I'm too busy. Well, this is this is just the mechanics. This is the clever bit. Bearing in mind that this is a manually controlled helicopter, as opposed to a drone, which is kind of self-flying. But this is the clever bit. This is the bit that takes the signals from the remote control receiver and drives tells each of the speed controllers to drive each of the motors. And what you've got on here is quadcopters that is the system which controls them, which is this, is designed to be inherently stable. The things are so unstable that if you were to try and as a person control the four motors individually, it would I suppose it's possible, but it would be almost impossible for most people. And so what it is it has they build into it an inherent stability using electronic means, and this is the electronic means. It does two jobs. It stabilizes it so that, roughly speaking, it will sort of hover. But it also, the other job of this is when I say go forward, which is that way, what it will do is it will make these two rotors here spin faster for a short period, and then it'll make these two rotors at the front spin slower. And what happens then is it tips up like this. Now, because it's tipped up like this, the air, if you like, that's blowing, I'm not talking proper dynamics, but the air that's blowing downwards is at an angle, and so it's going to tend to drift in that direction, and the more tilted it is, the faster it's going to want to go. What it then does is it turns the speed up of all four motors equally, and so you then get the speed. So it sort of tips it up and then then pushes it forward, and that's the intelligence. But what it's got on here is, you can see these little silver cans, and there's one here. You might notice they're actually all in different directions. These are gyros. These are the things that Free wants on his big helicopter, and they actually sense movement in their relative direction. So let's say, and I make this up, this one senses it doing that, this one senses it doing that, and this one senses it doing that. So you get the three, you get the, they call it 6 axes of movement, but 3 axes of movement. And so if you get a wind gust that makes it do this, so I didn't tell it to do that, but the wind does that, the gyro goes, hey, it's moved, and tells the chip, which makes these two spin faster and stabilize it. So it's always sort of just wobbling around, if you like, just around the flat position. The better the helicopter, the less you can see the wobbling. Is the basic answer, or the better the control system. But there, that's the intelligence. That's the bit that does all the work. The rest is just wiring. Ah dear. Okay, Poke. What? Poke Ranger. What is it? You stream? Sorry, I don't know. House music. Oh no, you're talking about Lost. Okay, I'm confused. Do you do house music the same as Lost does, or were you talking about Lost there? And I take it, Bubble, that Free has now gone live. I'm getting lost in chat. Lost in house, lost in chat. Okay. If I see you on, I'll drop by. It's UK time now. It's 10 o'clock at night, so I tend to watch Free for a couple of hours, and it's kind of bedtime. But I'll see if I can manage to come on and say hello, if nothing else. I'm kind of having explained that. I'm leaving it for this evening. I think 2 hours is a good shot. Sorry, Lost. I know you've not been here long, but we kind of, well, you kind of all can watch Free at the same time. I can't watch him at the same time as streaming, and I'm interested in airbrushing. It's one of my other hobbies. So I'm going to continue this tomorrow evening. We should hopefully finish it tomorrow evening, and but there again, what we should do and what we actually do is two entirely different things. But I am hoping to be able to fly it this weekend. I'll try, if I do fly it this weekend, to get some footage and play that on a stream, or drop it onto YouTube, so that you'll be able to see the fruits of all this labour, and how it flies or doesn't, as the case may be. But now I'm going to do the usual advert bit, which is, of course, if you're watching and would like to see more of this tomorrow night, then I can tell you we'll start at round about 1900 GMT. That's 8 o'clock PM in the UK, or 2 hours ago from wherever you are in the world. I nicked that from Free. If you watch his stream, you'll see him say that at the end as well. That's because it's a good idea, and I borrow good ideas, just as I let people use my good ideas. But equally, you can also follow me. I'd quite like it if you follow me. If nothing else, I can boast at the number of followers. But it's a nice thing to know that people like what you're doing, and hopefully Twitch would actually let you know when I go live, because sometimes I start early. It really depends on how quickly I eat my tea. But if you don't believe Twitch is going to tell you, as it sometimes does seem to forget to tell a lot of people, Then you can also follow me on Twitter at Zaragon Art, and that's down below the stream window. I'm not going to point because there's lost nose. I'm not very good at it, but it's downwards on your screen. That's assuming you're not watching me full screen, which would be very nice as well. There's a tweet goes out when I go live, but that's about the only time I tweet. So if you're worried about me inundating you with tweets, you don't need to worry about that. Apart from that, I'm going to wish everybody a good night. Thank you for everybody who's followed this evening, and I will hope to see you on tomorrow night in future streams. Have a good evening, everybody.